Vâng, kính thưa toàn thể hội nghị, chào mừng toàn thể hội nghị. Chúng ta quay trở lại để
Good
tiếp tục.
afternoon, welcome back to all of you. Welcome to the afternoon session of our conference. And before we begin the afternoon session, we have one of our OTs here, Mr. Ho Le Trung. He will lead a little activity to warm up the session for us. Good afternoon. Hello everyone. My name is Trung. Today, to kick off a very exciting afternoon, we have a great program lining up. Mr. Tuan, my classmate, and I from the first OT program in Vietnam, we have a little video and a little warm-up activity. So it is some activities that which you will show, which the video will show the instructions to you. And we all understand that a collection of activities can really help us in our daily life. Sometimes, you know, there's a lot of stress in our life, and we almost get familiar, conditioned ourselves to feeling helpless, to feeling a little bit icky, and we don't even want to move, or we become very unproductive and frustrated with ourselves. So it's a little movement, a little dance, and we hope that this will have really positive impact on your body, on your brain, even on the left side of your brain, and our left frontal lobe and everything. So this is very all research based that these movements will help us stay active, feel more awake. So can you please stand up to follow along with these movements, please? Good.
Vâng, xin trân trọng cảm ơn cử nhân Hồ Lê Trung cho một.
Thank you, our OT, Mr. Trung. That was very OT indeed. Yes, allow me to introduce him a little more. He graduated and now he's the head of OT division at the Hospital for Orthopedics and Rehab of Ho Chi Minh City. Would like to have the presidium for the afternoon session back on stage, please.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to this afternoon session. Thank you for the activities. So I have the immense pleasure of introducing our next speaker, who is Dr. Shovan Saha, and he has a Master's in Occupational Therapy in Hand Rehabilitation and a PhD in Assistive Technology Outcomes. He is currently the president of the Indian Society for Hand Therapy, an executive member at IFSHT. He was also the former honorary secretary of the All India Occupational Therapists Association and former head of the occupational therapy program in Manipur. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Samantha. Okay. Hello. Yeah. Thank you, Samantha. Very good afternoon, respected dignitaries, my dear students. Thank you so much for having me here, and congratulations to the entire team for putting up this event. So history is scripted, the discussions that was happening, and finally it bore the fruit. Okay, the culmination of all the activities that has been happening over the last several years, it has finally materialized as a conference. In the journey as a professional, a conference is a very important event for all of us. Now, my topic is on Indian stories. Okay, I believe that it is through stories that we'll be able to connect. And before me, the speakers who spoke on different aspects of occupational therapy, I'll try to, feature over here as to how does it look like when they actually get executed, in the ground. So that will be my endeavor through this presentation. Indian stories of indigenous splints. Okay, indigenous, I was discussing yesterday evening with Dr. Famjung. There are many activities that is happening through the support of various NGOs, which is funded by various developed nations. What if those funding dries up? Okay, so how do we create a system which is self-sustaining? Okay, based on the economic circumstances of our country. Okay, because India, Vietnam, we have many things similar. Okay, so how can we create a mechanism which is self-sustaining? Okay, that will be very, very important. So you have Indian stories of indigenous devices. So I'm going to take you through some of those work that we do at our facility. Yes, so you can see here 7.5 years, approximately 7.5 years back, a group of 5 students landed in Manipal. Manipal is a very oddly located, remotely located place, a small hillock over the western coast of India, the Arabian Sea. And these 5 students were clueless, lost, obvious reasons. Okay, obvious reasons because, so much of difference in terms of language, food, the community, and it's a huge challenge that they had gone through, right? And today is the day when they are here and they are shouldering the responsibility, of conducting this international event. Okay, so congratulations. So we managed to create these 5 soldiers. Okay, fabulous 5, as Lynette morning she was mentioning about that. So transforming them. So today is history been scripted here on this platform, and I'm really proud that we also have a little bit of footprint in this history. And I'll take the liberty of the chairperson just a couple of more minutes, just to share a little bit of historical anecdote. Yesterday, when I was in the War Museum, that is when I came to realize that Vietnam got its independence in 1945. Okay, and it was in the year 1945 that an American lady, based in India, married to an Indian, and then she went on to adopt India as her country. In 1930, she came with her Indian husband, and came to settle down in India. And at the age of 45 years, 1945, okay, she accidentally ran into an article by Helen Willard. Okay, and that article inspired her, and then she decided to carry her 10-year-old son and she back to the Philadelphia School of Occupational Therapy to train herself as an occupational therapist, returns back in 1948 and goes on to set up Asia's first occupational therapy school in 1950. So 1945 saw this history unfolding, Asia's first occupational therapy training program set up in India. Okay, and I'm happy, and me and my colleagues at the Department of Occupational Therapy, Manipal University, we with great pride, we feel that we have a little role to play the way occupational therapy is set up in Vietnam. Thank you, my dear students, 5 of them. So this is a small little workshop that we have. It's a very busy unit. Okay, and students from all over the world, they travel, including deacons and flinders, right? So they come here, and this is what we do undertake, and this is our lab. This is literally the nerve center of our department, and whole lot of activities that we carry out in this room. So it looks very ordinary, but the creations that happens in this room, they are at times quite extraordinary, that comes out from this room. So yeah, so if you see bottom of it, we generate needs. So what do we do? You know, how did we manage to, you know, overcome certain challenges, you know, with the kind of a constraint that we have in our country? It is a very low resourced country. Okay, so we have many challenges, right? Nothing is available off the shelf. Everything has to be created. And in India, unfortunately, many of these healthcare facilities are availed by people off the pocket. Okay, so that is the challenge. So at you know, on one side, we have to make sure that they're available, they're affordable, they are accessible. Okay, and it is WHO's agenda as well as you know, in regards to assistive technology. So we generate needs, we manage resources, we market them, we evaluate, conceptualize, design, develop, we handcraft them, try them, negotiate. There's a whole lot of negotiation that happens. You know, negotiation with the patient directly, with their family members, with the physicians, all referral agencies, policymakers, governments, you know, whole range of negotiation that happens. Ours is a, you know, it is a corporate hospital. It is India's biggest hospital. We are at a bed strength of 2,200 beds. It is India's largest hospital in the private healthcare facility. So nothing is free over there. Everything is paid, because the organization follows a basic principle that it has to be self-sustaining. You know, we can't afford to give free. So that is the agenda. Sell them, obtain inputs, upgrade, and at the end of it, we all aspire that these individuals, you know, who are being often, you know, they might be loaded with devices, but we all aspire that someday they will be off these devices. Okay, so these aspects are included in the designs, the way we undertake the designs. Also, this happens by being in the industry. So the splint unit inside the occupational therapy department, it functions in a slightly different way, because the splint unit is an industry. A very different kind of negotiation process happens. The running that center itself, because it's material that comes in. Okay, so the buying and selling of materials is a very different ball game altogether as compared to therapy services. And on this side, here, you know, we would, having worked in this domain and this particular way, we started to believe that we restore and not help. Now here, people might have different viewpoints of it, but we strongly feel that as an occupational therapist, you know, when we are approaching our patients, okay, we take a responsibility to be able to restore their function and not necessarily help them. Now, there is a difference between these two words. We'll not get into the semantics of it, but I'm just throwing, you know, words for your, you know, for thinking about it. So we restore human function and not necessarily help them with human function. And that language is very important in the domain of splint and adaptive devices. This domain is extremely aggressive intervention, unlike therapy, because here, everything is evaluated in terms of time. So when we are making a splint, okay, a person is going to ask, why should I pay? Okay, everything is black and white because the splint is visible. Okay, a product is visible. So people can, raise questions on that. Okay, they can pass their judgments, they can pass their comments, unlike therapy. So we call it the language of splint and devices as the language of black and white. Either it is black or it is white. There is no shades of gray. Okay, there is no shades of gray because when there is shades of gray, it is basically relative. So all of us are correct when there is shades of gray. But when it is black and white, either black is correct or white is correct. So in splinting, that is the language. Now, this is another way of looking at it. So that is the tabletop, and there is a vase kept on the tabletop. So the vase is the wisdom of occupational therapy. So if we want that the wisdom to, raise, right? So it is obvious that the 4 legs has to rise in tandem. It can't be one at a time, because if it is one at a time, then the vase will fall off the table surface and it will not rise. It will fall off. In India, we are facing a very, a very strange kind of a challenge. The development of occupational therapy in India is happening in a very lopsided way, and it is essentially in the domain of pediatrics. I don't know whether that challenge is, maybe Samantha might be able to, with her global perspective, the growth of the profession, in what domain it is happening. So there has to be a balance that has to be struck, right? So these other domains, splints can play a very critical role to ensure, except for mental health, it can, to ensure that there is a gradual rise and the tabletop is always flat, to ensure that the vase is balanced. Okay, so there is a role critical role that these devices can play. So this is a health tunnel. These slides are basically to, the whole idea generation behind why we have to enter, why do we have to step into the domain of splinting? And how do we create, or how do we get into an ecosystem which is black and white? Okay, which is black and white, because it's a very different language, right? So here you can see a health tunnel, right? And at the entry, it is often a physician, may or may not be, depending on the policy, depending on the governments, depending on the country that you're working. So it is a physician at the entrance, then the individual walks through the tunnel, and there are a host of professionals, they might be engaging with the individual, right, in different capacity. But at the mouth, okay, at the exit, it has to be an occupational therapist. Why? Because then the individual takes a giant leap here, and this is the functional realm of the society, right? So what is functional realm? It is not really prescribed in the book. It is not written, right? It is like, how do I play a role of a, computer professional? We know certain basic things, but when you have to work in a competitive setup, probably you might need to type at a particular speed with certain correctness, okay, at certain point of time. So these are the aspects that detailing often, because when we are learning with a mind and a body which is normal, and without even sharing with us, it just gets assimilated into the process. Okay, what is called as the tacit knowledge, right? So that is the need. So when we are saying that we are rehabilitating a person, are we taking into account those kind of refinement? So these devices can enable us to create those refinements to ensure that the rehabilitation that is happening, it is just right, in a just right way that is happening. Okay, where we take into account all these factors. It is not sufficient that the person is able to type in front of you. The person should be able to type at the workplace. It is like writing. We have so many patients. Now, if you in a therapeutic setup, if you ask the person to write, the person might be able to write. But we all know what happens. Now, in our country, we have a exam, say, for example. It is a 3 hours exam. You have to write for 3 hours. So the writing at the start of the 3 hours and the writing at the end of 3 hours is quite different. Okay, so the individual should be able to, sustain a 3-hour duration and should be able to adapt to those changes with every half an hour, how these changes are happening. So the individual should be able to adapt to that. And that will be the real rehabilitation of the individual. So how do we take that into account? Okay, so those things are important. So this gap that you see, okay, this is a vacant space. Many things are left to the subjectivity of the individual, and that is where the creative part of occupational therapy comes into play. Often they are quite unstructured, it is loose. Okay, it is very difficult to define them. So that is an empty space. And there comes the skill of how do we tune it, right? And in this space, it is the skill of the therapist that how do you interject through these technological intervention. And that is precisely that we do, because whenever we are designing something, yesterday I was discussing with Dr. Pham Jung, okay, about the role of orthoticians and the role of us, right? So we have to, what we do is we generate the referral based on the location of the individual in that vacant space. Okay, so that is how we intervene. But for an orthotician, it is somebody will have to present to them a scenario and tell them to make. And that is fundamentally the difference between us and they doing it. There is a difference between movement and meaningful action. Okay, now, how do we differentiate between physical therapy and occupational therapy? This debate is quite contentious. Okay, I'll not go into that debate, right? So what we do is we are more interested in the meaningful action. Movement does not automatically translate into a meaningful action. This, please be very clear about it. It is like, supposing I know how to play a guitar. Means what is the movement? So you do like this. But this movement doesn't translate into a music. It can, at the max, create noise. Okay, it can't create a music, right? Then somebody might say, oh, if I practice, then I will learn it. What is practice? What is the science behind practice? Practice is a very loose word. Okay, nobody will pay you for practicing, telling that word that you practice hard. But somebody will have to tell me the strategies to practice. How my hand, how my fingers will move. Because these things have to be taken into account when we are stepping into designing, right? So, can I operate from here? Okay. So what you see here is an alphabet OT. Can you stop? Yeah. Okay. So what you saw at the start of the visual letter OT, obviously it refers occupational therapy. But now what we see? Huh? Okay, black and white. Yes. Wake up, dear students. Your friends before me did a great job. I mean, that really made my job a little easy. It woke you up, shook you up. Okay. So what you saw over there, it is a blurred image. Anything else you would want to add to that? Anybody interested in photography? Yes, anybody interested in photography? I could see many people taking pictures. Yes, what was that in a photography language? So they were pixels. Okay. what looked so blurry is actually not blurry. They are very well defined. Can you replay it? Can you replay the video? Okay, so they are not blurry at all. They are very well defined, structured unit. Okay, no, it went to this thing. Okay, so what happens is, those are, each one is a square, a perfect square. Okay. So to the world, from a common man's eye, it is blurry. But from an occupational therapy point of view, who is getting into this design aspect, they will tell you then, yeah, thank you. Okay, now can you see this? They are very well-defined structures. Only thing is that they're shades. Some are lighter, some are darker. Right? So these boxes, they go on to form, when they come together, they form what is called as the entire act. So we say that, the individual has difficulty in brushing the teeth. Okay, what it is? Brushing the teeth, what it is? Say somebody, yes, madam, how do you write? If I ask you, how do you write? Okay, so she says that I pick up the pen and I write. Did you know how many years it took for you to master the art of writing? It takes around 7 to 8 years. A skill that takes 7 to 8 years to master, is it possible to sum it up in one sentence? No, it is not. Okay, so definitely it can't be such a simple process. Okay, it definitely cannot be such a simple process. It is an extremely complex process. So we, as an occupational therapist, we are expected to decode these processes. Okay, we are expected to decode these processes and find out which pixels or a set of pixels are affected. And then these technological intervention allows us to jump into those, get them sorted out, and then come out of it, and then see how does it impact the function. And this is how we start designing. So that was an analogy. But now let us see how it looks like. Okay, you can stop that, yeah. I'll just give you a little background, stories from India. Okay, so the hand that you see, the hand had a crush injury, multiple metacarpal fracture. Okay, and this lady works in a cashew scraping industry, cashew nut industry. The part of the country I'm coming from, okay, cashew nut industry is a very popular kind of an industry, and many women are involved into those industry. Now the challenge here is, it depends that their income is based on how many cashews they can scrape, and the scraping has to be perfect. If there is a damage in that scraping process, there will be money that will be deducted from their salary. Okay, so this is the challenge that they face. So on one hand, they have to scrape fast, then only they can scrape more cashew, then their income will increase. But when they are scraping fast, they might damage the cashew, and it can lead to loss of their income. Now this lady, her elderly parents are dependent on her. Okay, yeah, right? So you can see this is the affected hand. How the hand is struggling. It has to keep rotating the cashew as they scrape. Okay, so we have to enable the hand for a smooth rotating process. See, this is how a normal hand will do. You can see how seamlessly it is rotating the cashew. Okay. So this is how we pixelate activities, trying to find out, what is the role? Is the thumb playing a spoil sport? Is the index finger? Is the middle finger, or which finger? You can see how the hand is struggling. So that was one activity. This is another activity, right? This is traditional, Indian women's attire, sari, and wearing a sari is a very elaborate process, and it has many steps. Okay, it has many steps, but one of the most difficult steps is putting the pleats. Okay, this is how a normal hand would do. So when we see the normal hand, we keep this as a template to evaluate an affected hand. Now, this is the hand of a lady with head injury. We could manage to train her for all other steps, but finally she got stuck here. Okay, you can see how the hand is struggling. And this is where we make use of splints and adaptive devices. So splints and adaptive devices is not about making her independent in wearing this sari. That is a generalistic way. But it has to be for a particular, specific domain of that entire process. So this is the definition of splint, which, it is available. There are different agencies that they put up the definition. If you see the bottom of the slide, it is defined as an external device. Obviously, it is an external device. So it plays so many roles: supporting healing tissue, correct, prevent deformity, assist motion, aid in attachment. So it's a very complex process how the splint plays, goes on to play out these roles. So there are a lot of perspectives, when we are designer, we claim ourselves to be designer of splints and not necessarily maker of splints. There's obviously a difference between designer and a tailor, right? Anybody knows? Students, designer and tailor. No? I'm sure you're familiar with both these terminologies. Wake up, dear students. Designer and tailor, they are quite different. You might have quite a few of your dress stitched by tailor, but very few will have. I'm not sure in Vietnam, any famous, yes, ladies, any famous designer in Vietnam, dress designer? Sorry? Okay. Sorry, it's difficult for me to. Yes, sir has mentioned about a designer's name. So, did you gift your wife a dress designed by the name that you told? Yes or no? Okay, so there's a world of difference. Okay, there's a world of difference. Now, where is this difference coming from? Both of them are dress. Okay, both of them, tailors also and designer also. The cost comes in the way the whole approach is made. That is the tag. Okay, that is the tag. So here also it is like this. So it is creating rather than making. It is a huge problem-solving process, right? Delivering a device is just the beginning of the story and should pave the way for many such interventions. Okay, so one splint to the next, to the next, to the next, it goes on. Okay, it goes on. And remember that every time when we are giving a splint, patient pays. And remember that they are not paying at gunpoint. Okay, they are paying based on the rationals. They are paying based on the outcome. Okay, and these outcomes can be so addictive and they'll fall for it. And we create an environment for that. Okay, we create an environment for that. It is an aggressive intervention. Acquire the skill to see through the eyes of the devices. Okay, so when we are looking at a problem, we have to be able to look through the eyes of these devices. Then only it will happen. Uncanny knack for creativity, lateral thinking, imagination, design idea, anticipation. These are the various elements. Each one is a chapter. We spend lots of hours discussing on these things. So this is how a hand will come to us. Okay? So this is how a hand will come to us. And this, it is not only the hand that is affected, it is the mind behind this hand also is equally shattered. And then it goes through an enormous grooming process, both mentally, psychosocially, physically. Okay? And it goes through, an arduous journey. And this technological intervention does happen at different stages in different ways. And finally, the aim is to create a hand which is as mobile and as supple as you and mine. Okay, often we may not be able to reach that point, but we aspire. They aspire and we aspire. Right, and these technology does have an immense role to play. Right, so we all would want a hand like this, fingers at our own command. Right, so this entire journey, although it is a representational video, but this journey has different interventions that are there, technological interventions. Neurological conditions. Morning we are discussing with Anne, stroke, right? So this is a stroke hand, infantile hemi. Okay, and so there's a different way to deal with it. Traumatic hand deal differently, neurological hand differently. So you can see here, these are all handcrafted, made of metal. These are all indigenous things. We use the locally available material. Okay, and interestingly, we have Australian patients as well. Yes. Okay. So, so these designs are undertaken based on the feel of spasticity, based on the feel of the contracture along with the spasticity. Right? So, and often what happens is, if we prescribe it for others to make it on behalf of you, then there is a huge problem. So you can see those angles, everything, they are tailored for that hand, based on the contracture, based on the pain to which the patient can tolerate the stretch, everything is factored in. This is an adult cerebral palsy, a quadriplegic boy. When he came to us, he was around 15 or 16-year-old. So when he came to us, it was a point blank question. When will I eat with my hand? I'm sure, in this audience, if you are seeing patients, a cerebral palsy kid, and I'm sure even you would have faced this. In this case, he wanted to eat. Somebody might say, I want to write. Somebody might say, I want to drink. And when will I eat? Okay, when will I eat? How to give this answer? Right? It's difficult. It's difficult. But in the domain of splinting and devices, as I told you, it is black and white. So I presented this question to my postgraduates. Now, this boy is asking this question. This boy is saying that, how long will my mother feed me? Okay, so, and in the next 45 minutes, the boy was putting the spoon after 15 long years. Okay, so this design might look quite simple. This design might look quite simple, but we are making the mistake of looking at this design through our eyes. That is the problem. You have to learn to look at it through their eyes. Then only you'll understand. Then only it will hit you hard that what it means to wait for 15 long years. Right? So this is an adaptation given and a splint given. And combining these two, the person in 45 minutes, and this is how we create that activity, balancing a marble, because it's one of the tough things. So we have to train them at a higher level to be able to perform in real situation at a lower level. that is how you'll see in sports, they have been trained at a much higher level to be able to compete and win at a lower level. So that is a hand of a physician. She herself is an anatomist. Okay, there was a road traffic accident. Okay, and it was not road traffic, sorry. She slipped between a moving train and the platform.
Okay, thumb and finger together.
Okay, and luckily she was saved, but her hands got damaged. So when she came to us, she said that, sir, I need 3 things. She's in a medical school and she's an anatomy teacher. So I don't have to really teach her anatomy, right? She knows everything. So she was very clear. She was very candid in saying that I need 3 things. I should be able to open my car door and my office cabin door. I should be able to write on the blackboard, and I should be able to do dissections. Okay, I need these 3 things. Can you give me yes or no? Because the patients are paying off the pocket, they are so, upfront in their negotiation, right? So we should be able to raise our standards. We should be able to negotiate. We can't say that, sorry, if you are so upfront, no, I can't deal with you. Okay, so it is not, we can't do it that way. So we have to also raise our standards to be able to negotiate. And then this girl was with us almost for 14 months. Okay, she was with us for 14 months. And this image that you see is an outcome of that. It is one splint to the next. So if you see here, there is almost around 22 different devices. One to the next, to the next, to the next, like that. And finally, can you see in between here? Anybody can identify this? Spot on. Okay, so it is a chalk holder. Okay, it is a chalk holder. So what we had to do was that hand, through all these things, we had to raise the functionality so much that finally we could, the final lap of it, we could bridge it with that device. And at the end of 14 months, she could achieve that. Okay, and then her marriage was fixed. This is this thing, but it is important to share that story. So when her marriage is fixed, the first thing in our culture, the first marriage card, she herself came and she delivered it to me. Okay, and she said that it is the same hand that you had worked with, the same hand I'm inviting you for my marriage. Okay, so these are the little stories that really are very profound. Okay, they're very powerful, and as a professional, they're very, very gratifying. So these are the various splints, right from the finger. We make splints from head to toe. Okay, from head to toe, we make splints. We are not going to go into the detailing of this. Right, so these are all finger-based. I've tried to categorize based on the anatomical part, right? So they're the hand-based, they're the forearm-based. So they're the forearm-based, different conditions, different problems. Many are corrective, protective, preventive. So each one have their particular role to play. This is the radioulnar joint, the arm-based, shoulder-based, blocking splints. They're all for different purposes. Okay, so if you see the last one there, it is of a head injury patient inside the ICU. Right? So it so happened that, and it's a very common occurrence, many of the therapist community who are present here, okay, inside the ICU with profound head injury, often what happens is the entire focus is on saving the individual, stabilizing the vital signs. Often, they are undermined or it is overlooked. the patient is developing other set of problems. And many a times, unfortunately, what happens is the patient would have come out of the stage of altered sensorium, but the patient is left with debilitating contractures. Although now he has gained his senses, but he can't use his body anymore. Right? So you can see here severely contracted limbs and how they have been straightened out. These are the severely spastic limbs, following head injury. This is with all the fixators that we, sorry. Okay. So catch them young. So one of my, we do a lot of splinting for neonates, 5 days to 10-day-old children. Okay, we intervene that early. So this is one of my youngest kid. So this is a 5-day-old child was operated upon. Okay. So subclavian arterial stenosis, this child presenting with, the child had to undergo emergency surgery. And you can see the scarring can lead to debilitating contractures at the elbow. So we intervene as young as 5-day-old kid. So then we move on to assistive devices. Assistive technology is an umbrella term. Orthotics is one category under that. And these are adaptive devices. Any AT device is any item, piece of equipment or product system, whether acquired commercially, off the shelf, modified or customized, that is used to increase, maintain or improve functional capabilities of individuals with disabilities. Okay, so this is a little older definition, but it's very descriptive. Okay, and I really love this definition. So wherever I go, at least I will make a mention of it, because a lot of my designing work, it emerges from the perspectives as shared in this definition. So you can see that that is the hand of an computer engineer, electrocuted. Okay, so that is an electrocuted hand, right? Now, in adaptive devices, what happens is one of the crux is, I think, the morning, the last presentation before lunch, you had some images kept of, devices. Now, the challenge is when we are getting devices off the shelf, we have no idea as to how much the device is going to compensate. Either it will overcompensate or it will undercompensate. Both the cases, it is a problem. It has to be of the right fit, exact right fit. And there comes the role as a designer. Okay, there comes the role as a designer, because it is your skill to figure it out, that how much ability exists in that hand. Okay, and that ability, we should be able to make use of it. Because if we cannot make use of that ability, we might overcompensate, and the individual will not get a feel that he or she is doing it. It is somebody else who is doing it, right? So this is how, that makes the designing very, very complicated. It looks quite simple, but to reach to that point, okay, it is a very long process. So you can see here, these are the two writing devices. They are very different. Okay, the problems are quite different, and both of them, they needed to write. So often what happens is, when the right hand gets involved, what is the obvious suggestion, recommendation that we give or others give? Why don't you use your left hand? Okay, why don't you give your left hand? I'll tell you this story. I'm not sure. Please do stop me when you're running out of time. Okay, so this boy is from Tibet. Okay, and he is taken political asylum. India is, offers political asylum to Tibetans, right? So in one of the centers, he's undergoing the training for monkhood. And this hand gets blown up in an explosion. Okay, So he gets operated. This is his right hand. Okay. And then everybody told that you better start writing with your left hand. So then he comes to us, says that I cannot write with my left hand. So it is a spiritual compulsion that he cannot write with the left hand. He has to use his right hand to write the Holy Scriptures. And that is how this design is there. Okay. And in fact, this one fetched me an award for the American OT Congress. Okay, at the 80th American OT Congress. Right. So you can see here, you'll be quite surprised, which all fingers you use for writing. Yes, and which all fingers you use for writing. Tripod. So thumb, index, middle, none of them exist. Okay, none of them exist. So how to make use of the, the ring finger to be able to write? So for me, that is why for me, I should know how these roles of, the thumb, the index, the middle finger is, what role they each play. Pixelating. Okay, pixelating them. And then I should be able to incorporate those elements in my design. How many people they have to cook? Because that will tell us the weight. Okay, so all those things are factored in. Right? What is this? In Vietnam, do you get snakes? Huh? Okay. The part of the country I'm coming for, it has the world's highest density of king cobras, as recorded by Discovery and National Geographic. Okay. And one of the common, this person is a snake conservationist. Okay. So whenever a snake is sighted, so that is the hand. Can you figure it out? There are strappings on that hand. Yes. Okay. So whenever a snake is sighted, these people are called. So they will catch the snake, put it back in the forest. Right. So that is the source of livelihood. One unfortunate day, he got bitten by the snake. Okay. And that is what led to the problem. The operating surgeon said, you better stop this. But this gentleman, he comes to us, he literally begs and says that I do not have any other option but to go back to this work. Okay, so that is the kind of compelling circumstances that they are in. Okay, so then they, so what we have to do now? I have never caught any snake in my life. Okay, supposing a snake just creeps here. Sir, if the snake gets into your chair, what will you do? Okay. Do you know why we do that? Okay, do we know why we do that? It's very interesting phenomena. We do that because we are unsure as to how our reflexes would respond as against the snake. We are unsure of that. We are not very confident about our own reflexes. Right? That has to be factored when I am designing. This man, you can see how calm, composed, and he's smiling. So my design has to instill that confidence in his mind. Because now the world has changed for him. His hand is no more the hand that was before. It's a different hand with a certain set of deficits. Okay, so I have to instill that. So we watch a lot of videos to analyze, we discuss, we understand their behavior. Okay, and then we undertake this thing. So 17-year-old infantile Hemi. So she had a very, earnest request. I want to drink water while eating. As you all know, in Indian circumstances, we eat with hand. Hand means directly with the hand. So obviously the hand is smeared with food. Okay. And many people have this habit, including me. Many people have this habit of drinking water while eating. How many of you have this habit? Yes, quite a few, right? So this girl had this habit, and every time the mother has to sit while she is eating with the unaffected hand to put water, so that she can drink, because that smeared hand, she can't hold a glass. It's very messy. So that was her request, that can my affected hand, handle a glass of water. So that you saw. So a weight of 17 years. This is an enormous thing. This is the hand of a stockbroker. Okay. He works in stock, and one of the main requirement is they are always on the computer, and they really have to be sharp, quick in responding. So this is a road traffic accident, as you can see here, and he lost the ability to, press the keys. So when he's pressing, there is no dissociated movement, and there are multiple keys that will get pressed at a time, and it will produce a lot of errors. So obviously he can't use that hand. So his work, he is managing only with one hand. And that has reduced his efficiency by half. So he's really facing a big problem with that. So that is when he comes to us, and when we design this device, so that he can press one key at a time, and then we train him. He's been trained on the speed of typing. And then he's left when his speed reaches almost 50% of his typing speed. So as I began my story, that we all aspire that someday they should be able to come out of these interventions, and they will be able to do things by themselves. So if you see, the other hand is a partially amputated hand. Okay, and then he was fired from the job. He is a boatman. Okay, fishing industry is a big industry at that part of the country. Yes, madam, we are the last slide. This is. Okay, and then he was fired, and the owner did not want to take him. And what you see in the visuals is when we reinstate him, he is giving us a ride for seeing it, on the high seas, that how he can perform. Yeah, thank you. So these are the 5 soldiers that we groomed them for. Yes, and they are here to script the history. Thank you all for the great opportunity.
Vâng, cảm ơn giáo sư Shovan với cái phần chia sẻ rất là ấn tượng và lôi cuốn. Và
Thank you, Dr. Shovan. Prof. Shovan, he's both a professor at the Manipal University. He's also in charge of orthopedics department of the Manipal Medical Hospital. And I remember the memories. We made the first visit, a delegation from the Hai Duong Technical Medical University and UMP. We met Dr. Shovan, and we found him to be such a huge advocate for OT. He's always so willing to share everything that people need to know about OT. And he's also an inventor himself. He's worked so hard and has achieved so much in assisting devices. And he works even after hours. He would make appointments with us after hours, right? And we thought that he was asking us to join him for dinner. It was after hours, but we came, and he pulled us into his office to talk about occupational therapy, to talk about case studies. He opened files of patients to show us what OT can do for people. And we ended that session so late, but none of us felt hungry. We felt really alive, really inspired and motivated. And I think it's been really fortunate for us. And it is just our really big luck that we got the support from Professor Shovan, from his university. We set up our facility there thanks to him. And right after the conference, he's flying to Hai Duong with us. He's traveling back to Hai Duong with us to do more work there. So once again, thank you so much. Professor Shovan. And right after this, we will listen to a presentation from one of the very first master of OT from Vietnam, who have spent his quality time in India at the Manipur University. Please welcome OT Nguyen Khac. He's now a lecturer for occupational therapy at the rehab department of the Hải Dương University of Technical Medical and Technical University in Hải Dương. And next, his presentation will be on the study and the factors influencing return to work. Good afternoon, colleagues, professors. I'd like to share with you about the factors that influence the return to work within the first 6 months among blue-collar workers in India who gone through hand injuries. I want to first of all give a big thanks to Dr. Shovan, my mentor, for helping me complete this research in India.
Bài trình bày của tôi bao gồm có 10 phần.
So this is the content, introduction, literature review. We're going to talk about objectives, methodology, results, discussion, strength and limitations, recommendations, conclusion, and lastly, the reference. All right, so let's go into the introduction. So the hand is a prehensile extremity that is closely associated with adaptive skills. It has independent functioning, social participation, and very important for vocational purposes. An injured hand involves structures such as bones, ligaments, muscles, tendon, nerves, blood vessels, etc., which might cause restrictions in job performance or prevent people to come back to their job. Disabilities caused by hand injuries can lead to poverty due to its impact on the ability to perform a job. Impairments and disability reduce the likelihood of return to work on this group of people who are already vulnerable, like blue-collar workers. Injuries can happen during work or in leisure time, and they frequently happen more among male blue-collar workers. Blue-collar workers usually join the workforce without training. In India, there are about 300 million blue-collar workers, and the prevalence of hand injury was about 36 over 10,000 workers, according to a study in 2016. The delayed in return to work has become a very challenging social problem due to the significant impact it has on the socio-economic status and the individual well-being. A little bit of literature review. I use the Thap map and Scobart, and I also do some cross-reference. On this slide, this is the Prisma chart, which depicts the literature review and search strategies. So articles identified through the database searching was 254 articles. And then there are 25 additional articles identified through cross-reference searching. Then we filtered them out, articles after removal of duplicates and full text available language. We narrow it down to 243. There were only 11 articles that I was able to download full text, and they also are more appropriate in terms of the language and all that. I actually were aware of a research gap. It turned out very few literature that I could find had a correlation between the hand injury severity score and time to return to work. Moreover, there is a limited number of studies which investigate finding return to work outcome influenced by the degree of injury. And there's been no report available which mentioned the factor predictor of return to work outcome in blue-collar workers. And return to work is one of the very important outcome of OT. And it correlates directly with the patient's well-being and happiness. So that's why, understanding all of that, we set 2 objectives for our research. First of all, to identify the factors influencing the time it would take to return to work within the first 6 months after hand injury among blue-collar workers. And we also want to find a correlation between the time of to return to work and injury severity and other factors that influence return to work. And so for methodology, the study design include observational study. Study participants include working individuals within the first 6 months of their post-op period following hand injuries. For sampling method, we try to do convenient sampling, and I conducted this study during COVID. Actually, I only managed to approach 104 respondents. And instruments used in the study include return to work survey form, and I also use the modified hand injury severity score, which is what we know at MHIS. And in this score, we get to give score to the hand injuries, like the damages on the skin, on the nerves, blood vessels, bones, etc. Inclusion criteria, we're looking at blue-collar workers who have hand injuries within the age group from 18 to 59 years old, and they're still within the first 6 months after the operation. And they must be employed before the injury. For exclusion criteria, we will exclude participants with any comorbidities like cardiac conditions or joint diseases, or any psychological problem that can actually influence their return to work. So a bit about the results on this slide. This is a chart with which we're trying to describe the association between demographic factors and condition-specific and return to work. So as you can see, we have the domain, the factor, work status, and then other value. So we categorize them into male and female, education level, other demographic uniqueness, level of hand injury, work sector, and living status. We also talk about the compensation.
Người mà trong lĩnh vực việc làm thì những người lao động tự do thì có khả năng quay trở lại công việc, đó là khoảng 78,4% sau khi bị chấn thương bàn tay sau 6 tháng.
There's a statistics here. 70 to 80% of them return to work with some of the welfare benefits. And for people with the MHIS lower, they have higher chances to return to work. So MHIS at 62, their return to work rate is higher, 92%. The next slide is our correlation figure. So total MHIS of 0.758, the total MHIS was found significant positive correlation with the TW.
So after we analyze one of the results gathered, now we move to the discussion part, and we found that a majority of the study population were self-employed and availability of reimbursement. So it shows a high chance of returning to work among participants. But in the Indian society, unemployment has always been a cause for concern. And without unemployment benefits funded by the state, we found that we see this integration support from extended family. We haven't found any congruence with the report shared by Lee et al. In 2010. And then the result was also consistent with the previous finding by Izadi et al. In 2018. And similarly, from the work of Styron et al. In 2011. And another important point that we found is that regarding the severity of hand injury in the current study, we found that majority of participants in the study is MHISS is very low, and it indicates the ability of returning to work. So another thing is that there are very few reports sharing the severity of hand injury and the time that participants return to work. Regarding the strength and limitation of the study, the strengths of study is that we addresses the factors influencing returning to work in blue-collar workers after hand injury within 6 months in Indian context, and we explore the predictive factors of return to work outcomes among blue-collar workers in India. Regarding limitation, in my study, there was a deviation of information due to the happening with the time returning to work, because this indicator was measured using self-reported data, not from the agency or the employer. So there will be some incongruence there. And the second limitation is the sampling method. And then the sample size was really small. In terms of recommendations, we recommend that there should be more future studies to evaluate the relation between social demographic factors, condition-specific factors, and the outcomes of returning to work time. And finally, in terms of conclusion, through our study, we have come up with several key conclusions. First of all, for freelancer and self-employed worker, the conditions where they have to work without reimbursement is the factor that significantly associated with the time they return to work, and the classification of injury is identified as an important predictor of returning to work. And the MHISS were found to be a strong predictor of returning to work. So these are the key conclusions after our research. And that's all for our study. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, MOT Tuan, especially for being on time, for completing your presentation really on time for us. Mr. Tuan was one of the 5 master students from Vietnam who were sent to India for 6 years. They started out at bachelor degree holders for physiotherapy, and then they took a 3.5-year program for bachelor in OT, and then they continue with the master program for nearly another 3 years. So 6 years altogether. And I remember a year into their master program, then COVID broke out, and they were in India at that time. And as you can remember, India got one of the biggest hit, and it was super stressful, and they struggled a lot, and they wanted to come home, to come back to Vietnam, because the COVID situation in India was so bad. And we actually tried to sign them up for the rescue flight with the Vietnam embassy in India, but it was so difficult. So we tried to motivate them, and they persevere. They decided to stay in India through COVID to complete their program. Had they returned at that time, it would have taken them much longer to complete their master degrees, and we would not have these 5 lecturers and leaders in OT now here in Vietnam to help us develop occupational therapy in Vietnam and to guide the next generations of students. And next, we're going to hear another presentation from a Vietnamese speaker, Miss Nguyen. Miss Nguyen was one of the first 9 students of occupational therapy program. She has returned to her work at the April 30th hospital, which belonged to the Ministry of Public Security. And her specialty is to bring in OT services for people with cognitive problems.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the introduction. And today I'd like to bring you a very interesting presentation regarding our efforts in the 30 April Hospital for dementia population. And before I start my presentation, recently I have watched a video on TikTok, which is very interesting video. And it is as follows. Have you had meal or lunch yet? And the response in the video is that, yes, I had, or yes, I did. And then the next question is, what have you had? And the response was, I had vegetables. And then the next question was, stir vegetables or boiled vegetables? And the response was, boiled vegetables. And then the next statement was, you're so cute. So I really enjoyed that conversation because that conversation includes open questions. They have encouragement words, they have praising, they have motivation words there. I think we can take the language samples to bring in our training here for the patients. And it's quite similar to our work in the hospital. And we can ask the patients in our setting that, do you see anything in the board? And patients may say, yes. So that is an example of a question. Like, do you see anything on the blackboard? That's a closed question, right? And we can continue asking, so what did you see? Which letter did you see? How many and letter there? Or what is the color of T letter? So we can use open questions and praising patients. So with that very simple conversation, we can find out the gaps in communications and language of the patient. Then we can develop strategies and provide intervention. And today, I'd like to bring you the 3 subtopics as below. I'm going to talk about the complications of Alzheimer to our health, the role of OT, and our cognitive intervention. First of all, regarding the complication of Alzheimer and how that condition affects our health. So what do you think about this photo? This is a perspective of a person with dementia. It is said that I have egg, like chicken egg, duck egg, buffalo egg, cow's egg, everything, lay egg. And all of these eggs will like blonde as hatch as little chick.
The other complications caused by Alzheimer, such as misplacing objects, cannot recall what they've just done recently. Moms would be asking questions like, who took my money? And then some moms with dementia, with Alzheimer, would blame her own children for taking her money, for example. And then some patients, they ask their child to bring them to certain places, and then they got confused. Like, why did you bring me here? And they would be telling us things like, why do you make me read this book? I'm so busy. I'm a housewife. I need to go to the market. I need to cook 3 meals a day. Why am I here at a reading exercise? And when you ask them if they can read any words on the board, they would say, no, I can't recognize anything. So there'll be a lot of changes in behaviors, in personalities, even their abilities to recognize places and where they are. Sometimes there'll be confusion of time and place, or they don't even inform other people when they're hurting. They do not notice or be able to describe any side effects of the drugs. There was this patient, he has cancer, but he has also dementia. He doesn't remember that he had cancer. He's always very upbeat, very optimistic, and that's the upside of it. He's very optimistic and positive, but after a few chemo sessions, he even forgot that he needs to take extra therapies for his Alzheimer, and he refused to come back for therapy. There are other problems, for example, memory and language loss, impaired judgment, and other cognitive changes. It will cause difficulties and challenges in their treatment of other health problems. Some of the early impacts on the brain could cause some of the physical functions in eating, in swallowing, and in controlling of their behavior. Most Alzheimer patients do not die from the man disease, but often from the comorbidities such as pneumonia and infections and falls. So what is the role of OT in this? Occupational therapy can support treatment and care for people with dementia, in particular by engaging them in the activities. For OT, we'll always try to be patient-centric, and it starts with social participation, the daily activities in their daily life, play and work, identify the right strategies to deploy at different stages in that person's life at different timing. And when it comes to cognitive intervention therapy that we can do at our centers, that would include cognitive training, cognitive rehab, and cognitive stimulation. For training, we will first aim at the tasks that gears toward cognitive function, for example, memory, attention, or problem solving. There are cognitive rehab, which includes evidence-based recovery or compensation strategies tailored specifically to each of the individual needs in their living environments. And the real objective here is to give an intervention to support the patients and their families in their daily lives. Cognitive stimulation means the intervention that help improve their general cognitive function and social functioning. In cognitive stimulation is a non-drug treatment, evidence-based. It was designed in the UK by Dr. Autism Spectrum and her colleagues. There are 3 types of cognitive stimulation therapy, including standard, maintenance, and personal. Right now at my hospital, April 30th, we're doing group intervention and personal intervention. So for group intervention, in this research, we have conducted, we have studied 14 or more sessions, including thematic activities. The objective is to provide actively stimulated environment that engage our patients and provide an environment to optimize group learning and social interaction. In cognitive stimulation, first of all, it has been proven to be an evidence-based and effective intervention without drugs. Cognitive stimulation is recommended for patients with dementia on the mild and moderate level, and it's more effective than any drug methods. So what does it help? First of all, cognitive stimulation can help create a connection between the members, enhance interaction, help them communicate better with each other. And what's really important is that it helps them realize that they aren't the only one with these problems. It will help them enhance their self-worth. It helps them develop social inclusion skills, which will facilitate the learning of positive behaviors through imitation. And the forms and exercise that apply here are very diverse. The learning is often repetitive to help patients form memories and new habits to help them maintain and increase their reflex processing skills, increase their mobility, independent living, in their daily activities. Here are some photos. The patients will sit together, will support each other through these exercises, which are all very cognitively stimulating. For group therapy, we will include a group of, we make a group of 3 to 8 patients. We're doing it twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday. On Tuesday, we do it for 3 hours from 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock. On Thursday, we do it 2 hours, 9 to 10. The objectives are to maintain and improve cognitive function, help them control their emotions, help them tackle their behavioral disorders, and also maintain and be able to function in their daily activities such as dressing, bathing, cleaning, and moving. Help them maintain their family interaction and social relationship. That will help reduce the stress for the patient's family members, and also delaying the time that they depend entirely on other treatments. Here is the breakdown. This is a detailed program of our Tuesday session, which runs from 8 to 11 a.m. After the exchange of greetings and intro, there'll be some gentle movement games with balls and tools. From 8:30 to 9:15 will be learnings about animal plants, maybe doing some music, some basic math, art, etc. On Thursday is a shorter program, and it's lighter actually. People can do singing and more interactive activities. For every session, we would start with something easy, and we'll conduct the activities from the easier to the more difficult. And these exercises are great for their memory. For example, they can tell the difference of colors. They can tell the colors apart. Group these sticks into the colors and count how many sticks you have. And they can use the sticks to form shapes or letters. We help them name the very common objects. And then these are some beads making activities where they can make their own bracelets. The practical orientation that improves patient cognitive abilities in their current confusion in space and time. Many patients are confused space and time. So you need to keep asking questions like, do you know what day is it? What time is it now? For anyone else out there, it's such a simple thing, but for people with dementia, it can be a real challenge. We also conduct our session in thematics. So we have different themes and topics. We can build themes and activities around the holidays or around favorite activities, around hobbies of patients, which they used to love before they got sick. And we want to make sure that even with dementia, they continue to be able to do those activities, to be able to pursue their hobbies. So we motivate them, encourage them to come back to all of that. We also use stimulation to help them perform the daily physical activities. We also give consultation in home remodeling, refurnishing of their house, of the living space, to make it easier for them at home. And apart from the group therapy, we also offer individual therapy. For these training activities, we personalize them according to the health condition and the uniqueness of each patient. And we try to really be able to build on their strengths, understand their strengths, and based on their strengths to suggest the activities for them. For example, if they have problems reading, we need to dive deep into that. We need to really be able to help them to read books, newspapers, maybe a text with multiple colors so that it could help them along. The treatment of dementia does not rely solely on just a few approaches, such as using medication and diet, but it must include brain exercises and regular physical strengthening exercises. The memory unit model needs to be scalable, needs to be replicated in other places. Right now, only my hospital is doing it. And the recommendation is that for the communities out there, if a family member has dementia, you need to give them intervention as soon as possible and look into a community approach. Group therapy with individual therapy is important to help them maintain, to practice their memory, to motivate them to do the exercises, which will help them improve their life's quality. Well, through my presentation, I think I can only try my best, but it's difficult in a few minutes to describe to you the difficulties, the challenges that a person with dementia has to go through on a daily basis. I would like to read to you a poem written by this poet. He wrote for his mom, for his friend's mom. His best friend's mom had Alzheimer, and she could not recognize her son. So this son has a poet. Once upon a time, I said goodbye to mom. My mom cried, and I just went away 10 years ago. I came home, I cried, and she giggled like I'm a stranger. She was like, "Hey, Du, where did you come from? Did you, any chance you met my son at all along the way? He looked a bit like you." She remembers and then she doesn't. A lifetime until she became dust. And this mom, she lost her memory for good. She had dementia, and until the day she died, she could not recognize her son. She did not remember her son at all until her last day. And that is just life. You remember and you forget on until the end. Until you stop forgetting, until you stop remembering, and all you left for lives is memories that you are forgotten and are remembered. Thank you to Ms. Binh. And MCNV played a very important role in the development of occupational therapy in Vietnam. MCNV, together with UMP and the Hải Dương Technical Medical University, have helped produce 57 very first OTs in Vietnam, bachelor degrees OTs, through different training programs, different structures of training. We have Mr. Hồ Lê Trung, who was one of the very first qualified OTs in Vietnam, very first bachelor degree holder of OT in Vietnam. He graduated top of his class right here at the University of Medicine and Pharmacy in Ho Chi Minh City. Mr. Trung played a very important role in advocating for OT, in supporting his colleagues to take part in the intervention in community outreach and helping different types of patients. And for his expertise, he's working a lot with children on the spectrum of autism. And now he will share with you his presentation on group therapy for children at the 1A hospital.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, all of the distinguished guests and my colleagues. As an occupational therapist, initially I registered for a topic relating to children with autism. However, due to the current context, and that study or that work is still in the IRP process to get the approval of the committee of the hospital. That's why I couldn't share with you about that work. I hope that in the second or the third scientific conference, our team will have the opportunity to bring that study to you. So today I join you with the topic, as you can see here, group therapy for children with CP at 1A hospital. So CP stands for cerebral palsy. And during the time when I studied at medical school, my faculty told us that we will try to remove or make a shift from using another Vietnamese term as by now into CP as a way to relieve the burden for the children and the family with CP, because in Vietnamese language, it sounds like a burden. So I'd like to briefly introduce you a bit about cerebral palsy. I'm sure that most of you here are very familiar with this. So CP occurs while a child's brain is still developing. It's a group of disorders caused by non-progressive unmature brain, and it can happen before birth, during birth, or immediately after birth until 5 years old. And it appears with clinical features like abnormal motor balance and posture. Regarding the current prevalence of CP at this point in the world, it's around 1.8 to 2.3 per thousand children, and in Vietnam, it's 1.8 per 1,000. Like I mentioned, CP can happen for different reasons, maybe before birth, after birth, or during birth, like infection, aphasia, or during birth, premature birth, embryonic damage, or difficulty delivery, and after birth, it can be caused by infection or brain hemorrhage, etc. And here are very typical symptoms that we often observe in children with CP. They may have spasticity or abnormal reflexes. They may find difficult in coordinating their muscles and their limbs in conducting the mobility. And regarding classification, based on the current classification, we have 3 main types: spastic, dyskinetic, and ataxia. And we have another 4 groups at this point as a mixture of all types of disorder. And regarding treatment for children with CP, mostly we focus on supporting and developing optimal motor skills and/or compensation learning strategies. So here are the list of strategies that we're using for children at 1A hospital. We use medication, we use medical equipment, surgery, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and other types of therapy and intervention. And at 1A hospital, we have just implemented a comprehensive program for children with CP for just about 2 or 3 years from now. So this program is very new to us. And we have recognized several issues or challenges when it comes to the implementations of our therapy program. And the thing we observed was that children with CP often have less opportunity to participate in activities as other typical children. And secondly, they suffer the disadvantages in terms of social communication opportunities, and they have limited social environment to practice communication skills. So the children that we work with in 1A hospital, most of them are inpatient children. Their parents send them to the hospital and they stay most of the time in the hospital. But in other situations, the parents will keep the children at home and don't let them out at any occasions to see people. And that's why many children come to us the first time. They started with, like, they say hi to us or respond to our questions in a very inappropriate way because they didn't have much opportunity to practice communication. And the third challenge we found in this population is that they lack of learning opportunities and practice learning skills. Some children with CP have a lot of struggles in moving their upper limbs or lower limbs, but they are very good at communication. They speak in a very cute way. Their cognition, their intellectual capability are really good, but they are not allowed to go to school. They don't know how to read because their parents said that now they want them to be able to move their arms, their legs first, and then they can learn words or letters later. That's why those children were delayed compared to their peers. And many children have a burning desire to bring their children to school for schooling, but they could not find any schools that can accept their children. And as you might have known in mainstream school, many mainstream schools don't accept children with disability because of the burden in care at school. And additionally, regarding parents of children with disability, the parents said that it's not appropriate to send the children to school because their children cannot keep up with the pace of the peers at school. So there is currently no kind of middle or mixture of environment in Vietnam for children with disabilities to join schooling. And the 4th problem we observe when we work with these CP children is that individual therapy seems to become boring to them, and they look less motivated. And through our interaction, our conversation with their parents, and based on our observations in the way that these children interact, we recognize that we should make something new or change the way that we work with the children here. And that's why we chose group therapy to resolve all of the above issues. So in group therapy, we provide for a group of children from 2 to 6 clients, And these children share similar problems of activities, and they are supervised by therapists and assistants. And we name the session that we work with them as a very cute way, like baby class by Mr. Trung and Miss Diễm. And this class is delivered by me, myself, and my colleague, Miss Diễm. She's also one of the OT mates that study with me in the first years in Ho Chi Minh UMP. And we organize this classroom for the children in 1A hospital for the age group from 3 to 10 years old in every Thursday morning at 9:30 a.m. And each sessions last around 45 to 60 minutes. Regarding the steps to take, first of all, we will choose a group of children with similar disabilities or limited capacity. Then we select appropriate activities according to their age, their capacities, and the goals for them. Then we prepare the tools and equipment. And regarding the selection of the children group, we will base on different classification scale like CP, FCS, like you can see here. And we consider the level of mobility of these children based on these classification, the level 3, max, and then the level of self-mobility with limitation, and CFCS, the part relating to communication and function, which shows children who have inconsistent communication style, maybe with familiar ones and unfamiliar ones. In general, they have communication problems. And regarding to the other scale, you see more of the aspect of the intervention here. In every session, we chunk it down into 4 main parts. We start with the welcoming part with simple questions. And these are very basic questions that we check in with the children every day. Like, what's your name? How are you? Or are you happy today? Have you had breakfast yet? And we consider this as we let them sit in a circle. And often the child sitting next to me always asks me, how are you, Mr. Trung? And I say that I'm as strong as a buffalo. And he repeated after me, strong as a buffalo. And then we move to the next session. We call it musical exercises. I'm going to turn on the songs that we call national songs like Baby Shark. And we let the children do some warm-up activity with their joy, with their body. We're doing ponytail, morning exercise. And then we introduce the third parts of the section where the children will play some motor game. And we try to name this game in a very stimulating way, like passing ball, pushing snowball, click a monster. And finally, we end up the session with an arts session. And these activities relating to 5 motor skills like decorating Christmas car, making watermelon, how to do it, like a fruit juice, and fish pool. We cut the little straw for the children, and they can use the straw to catch a fish, and they will be awarded with a little gift by the end of the session. And in brief, after we finish one of these steps, I'm going to show you a video so that it's helpful you visualize how a session looks like.